Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll get started then. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Lisa Snyder. I'm the Director of Community Programs at Neighborhood Design Center. We work in partnership with Councilmember Lourdes Barroso de Padilla's office at Council, as well as the City Department of Neighborhoods, to kind of help facilitate this program and process, for the third round. So we're really excited to be kind of at that space to be able to offer grants and funding to support beautification efforts and your community organizations with opportunities. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists for today. As I mentioned, they are all 614 grant recipients, all in different stages and phases of project implementation. I'm going to start with you, Ms. Joyce. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and the project that you got funded, we'll get started there.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Joyce Wright Harris from the Growing Hearts and Hands Community and Legacy Gardens. The community garden was started in 2009, and in 2012, for the Columbus Bicentennial, we launched the Growing Hearts and Hands Legacy Garden. We're located at near the intersection of Kelton and Oak Street in the Franklin Park neighborhood, almost across the street from the Trolley Barn East Market, so we're easy to find.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Joyce. Ms. Jennifer, I'll have you introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see all of you. My name is Jennifer Jordan, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director for the Gertrude Wood Community Foundation. The Gertrude Wood Community Foundation has been serving the community since 2005. We offer social services such as mentoring and family engagement. We currently have a mentoring program. We also help people with credit recovery so that they can purchase their first home. And we also rehab homes and sell it for home ownership. And just a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you.
Kacey, I'll go ahead and have you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Kacey Brankamp, and I'm with an organization called Capital Crossroads Special Improvement District. We're an association of downtown property owners, and these property owners all fund a variety of services in downtown, primarily supplemental cleaning and safety services. We also have homeless outreach staff who try to connect unhoused individuals with services. We do special events, landscaping, and other beautification efforts in the right-of-way. And the project that we received funding for, as you see on the screen here, are 3 new permanent public restrooms. So these were funded by the City of Columbus, and we were the project managers for this effort to do the community outreach to determine the locations and then actually oversee the construction and installation of these. And specifically for the 614 Beautiful grant, we applied for funding to hire local artists to design artwork to wrap these public restrooms. So the public restrooms are in place now, and the artwork should be installed within the next couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, Kacey. And then last but certainly not least, Nora.
Hello, I'm Nora Gerber. I serve as the Executive Director for the University District Organization, which is a planning nonprofit for the 13 neighborhoods that surround the Ohio State University. So we do lots of different things, including a lot of beautification efforts, which leads us to our project, which is the Iuka and Waldeck Pocket Park. It is the front lawn of the Indianola Presbyterian Church on 1970 Waldeck. So if you're familiar with the off-campus area, it's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle type of situation here. But we've done a lot of community workshops and community engagement, and we're really driven, all of our programs are driven through that type of community engagement, and we've included that in our project. And we are starting to implement, actually June 10th will be our first actual implementation day.
So thank you guys all. I'm going to put us on the screen just to have the panel for a little bit before we get into presentation. Again, we'll kind of talk a little bit about challenges and triumphs, I think, that come with the application process and even just the project process of what it really takes to see things through. But if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat. At the very end, we'll also kind of prompt questions from the group. But I think, and I'll leave this to everyone as more of a general question, kind of how did you hear about the 614 Beautiful opportunity, and what encouraged you to actually apply for the opportunity?
I'll start. So I received an email about it from the council member's office about the opportunity. We had applied for it the first grant cycle too, and we're aware of it from a direct communication from council. And for us, it was just such a great opportunity to try to get dollars to help us fund just the purpose of the grant to beautify some areas of downtown. So we met as a staff to discuss different projects that we might want to launch, and we went more for what I would say is the low-hanging fruit on our end, this restroom project. So once we saw the opportunity, we just talked, internally about what we'd want to apply for and went from there, because it's just such a great way to help boost up a project and beautify an area.
For me and for our organization, the 614 Beautiful program was a just lucky discovery at 1 o'clock in the morning online. Our community garden, as I mentioned, had been in existence since 2009. And over time, things wore out. We had wooden beds and using rain cistern to collect water for the garden. Any number of things have happened over that time span. So we were in the midst of trying to restore the garden and replace worn out equipment and facilities. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I discovered the 614 Beautiful, something I was looking for help. And I knew that the Neighborhood Design Center was in existence. So I went on their website and I went, oh my God, the shoe fits. Let us apply. And I reached out, quick email to say, hey, we're a community garden. We need some help. And a few weeks later, I got an email from Lisa saying, we've got this program. And it just was just a wonderful opportunity, even though the turnaround time to get the grant submitted was very short, and we put it together. We had some plans that we were working on to evolve over the next 5 to 8 years, and we just plugged in and went full speed ahead because it was too good an opportunity to let pass, even though we weren't sure that that was the right time. We didn't know if the opportunity was going to exist a year from now. And I'm so happy that it is continuing and entering the third cycle. So plunge ahead, plan, and get it done.
A lot of good faith too.
Yeah, I think to build on kind of these two stories, we were approached by the Indianola Presbyterian Church about how they could transform their lawn into more of a community space, a place where people could come and play and relax, because it was just it's just a big empty green lawn right now, and they wanted it to be more interactive. And that felt very aligned because we had just completed a big community engagement process where one of the takeaways was people wanted to get together more to have a space for community, because a lot of our third places are going away, and so having another place, and then also having another green space that they could actually enjoy and relax in. And so we were hearing this need from the community, and then a partner in the community said, we have this space that we want to transform. And we said, well, this is coming together. Now we just need to figure out how we can fund it. And Neighborhood Design Center, I was like, hello, we have this grant. And I said, oh, well, this feels like a really wonderful match coming together. And so it was all these different pieces that really aligned. But It was community driven, met a community need met with another community partner that was able to come together to provide the space, and then a neighborhood design center is also in the university district, so another institution that was able to produce the money. That was great.
I heard about the 614 Beautiful grant while attending our Livingston Avenue area commission meeting. Our liaison, Jesus, and Nancy, who's also associated with council, brought the information to everyone at the meeting. And so even though I've been in this role as the executive director only for 3 years, I had volunteered with the organization for like 13, 14 years as a board member. So in my mind, I was also a member of one of the local churches that's in the driving park area where I have the privilege of serving. So in my mind, I remembered all of the landmarks that I grew up seeing that are no longer there. And I remember growing up and hearing all of the people of influence in the community. And so I took all of that. Jesus mentioned it in the meeting, and I thought, what if we have a way to highlight all of these local heroes and their landmarks and put it there? Because even though I remember it, a lot of new residents don't know of it. And what better way to preserve it? So I reached out. I had a chance to meet Lisa at the Neighborhood Design Center to learn more information about it. This was my first public art type of endeavor. And so I was nervous, and I did a whole bunch of research, and I found some webinars on it. And so that's how we started and did some partnering, and here we are.
Yeah, and I think all of you have kind of threaded together, right, the strong community component, which is obviously a key piece of 614 Beautiful for us is, and I think that a really kind of happy accident. We knew that we wanted these projects to be very community oriented, but I think what's been really fun to see is how every organization, every community has kind of adapted to their neighborhood. How do we get, you know, our feedback from neighboring, it could be neighboring properties, our neighborhood at large, other stakeholders, how do we engage and truly make this a community effort? And I think that's been, for me, one of the most rewarding things to see beyond just the beautiful projects is that, you know, I'm seeing and attending co-design, you know, meetings that UDO might be doing. I'm seeing the public call for artists that, you know, Crossroads Sid is putting out for these. I'm seeing the paint by murals, you know, numbers, and I'm seeing at Connect 4 with, you know, on the for the underpass mural, and then, you know, Version Joyce, like, you know, seeing students, community members, all sorts of people kind of come together, you know, other organizations. So just kind of as a more of a general question for everyone, can you talk about sort of your community engagement strategy and kind of what were some of those ways in which you engaged the community members at large to help really strengthen what your projects are today?
Well, for us, we connected with some organizations in our community that we had previous relationships with. The Transit Arts program at the Central Community House was an integral part of what we wanted to do in terms of involving youth, especially in art activities to beautify the garden. Alva's House has been a key partner. We have worked with them over the years with people transitioning back into the community from incarceration, and had good experience with them coming out, mowing the grass, doing weed whacking, doing a variety of things. And over the years, and especially over that COVID piece, which we were trying to recover from with the loss of engagement in doing kinds of volunteer work, we had to reestablish a relationship with Alva's House. And that has worked out wonderfully. We had men from Alva's House, and we were trying to engage women. And this is the first year, actually, we've been able to have women come out and work in the garden. So it's been a good experience for them. They're loving it because they like getting out in the fresh air and getting active again. And we've had good experience with them engaging with volunteers from the community. You know, it's been a wonderful experience, and we're very rewarding in that respect. We also transitioned over to a new fiscal sponsor. Our new fiscal sponsor is the Franklin Park Civic Association, and that has been advantageous for everyone to increase our access to a wider community in the neighborhood. Near East Side Area Commission has been wonderful to connect with them because they have a community engagement committee, and they, helped us as we put together a couple of events and helped. Some of them even came out and helped work in the garden. So cast your net wide, let everybody know you need help, and you'll be glad you did, because you can't do it alone.
I'll jump in. Those are all really great comments that I would echo too. I had also, like Jennifer, not managed a process like this before, where we did a public call for artists. And so one of the first steps for me was just trying to understand this process from people who do it. So we reached out to the Greater Columbus Arts Council to get some information from them. And Jamie Goldstein there provided a wealth of information through artist contracts and public calls for artists. So I was able to look through some of those documents to help just get familiar with what that process would be for our project. I also met with the owner and manager of Blockfort Studios, which is located in downtown, and they do all kinds of projects with artists. And so he was really helpful in helping me structure how to do the call for artists, including the payments that we did to artists. And then I also had reached out to the Columbus Art Commission to understand that process too. So, just trying to arm yourself with as much information as possible, and making calls to people, especially early in the process. People were very willing to share information and provide some guidance. And so that was really helpful for me. So that was more on the internal process. And then on the external process, we had a lot of these partnerships already in place through the public restroom project. And as I mentioned, we're an association of downtown property owners. So we work very closely with the property owners. So putting together our community, I called it our community engagement committee. They helped to review all of the artwork that was submitted. And so we try to be really strategic about making sure that properties that were adjacent to these 3 restrooms were included on this committee. And then some overarching groups in our downtown area. So places like Experience Columbus, the Downtown Residents Association, places like that, that could also be representing an important constituency group in this effort that we did. So yeah, I think if you're new to this, it can be a little intimidating. It was at first for me, but just picking up the phone and making calls to various people helped to take the mystery out of it and start to come up with a process, because you'll probably find that somebody out there in our city has done this kind of process before and can help you with it.
I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, as well as my other panelists did as well. I'm a visual, so I have to see it in my head. I have to see all the moving parts before I can articulate it. And just being, like I said, just new to this whole process. So I also reached out to the Greater Arts Commission, also reached out to Columbus Art and Design, because at one point I thought about maybe hiring some of the students to give them internship hours and experience, as well as some dollars to help them in their schooling. I reached out to the city of Columbus to find out, hey, what's your process? What are all the things that I'm going to need to know for the city to get approval? Because, and then I also reached out to ODOT. I wasn't sure, since we were going to put the mural on public property, I didn't know if it was a city thing or ODOT, or what should I do. So I spent a lot of time talking to different people at ODOT and the city to let them know exactly what we're doing, what the time frame, who we were going to hire, where the funding was coming from. They wanted to know what type of materials we were going to use. They wanted to know exactly where we were going to be because they wanted to make certain that the space, since we're using a concrete wall, make sure that it was like didn't need any repairs. So that's also something to think about if you choose to use a public space. What we may look at and say, oh, that looks good. The city or ODOT can say, no, there needs to be repairs, so look at a different place. I also connected with Lisa Snyder to find out what's the process through everything. And last but not least, I reached out to the residents to say, hey, here's all the information. I scheduled 2 public meetings. Well, I sent out an email for all of the people that I knew in our community that comes to different meetings. And then I scheduled 2 resident meetings. I scheduled one during the day and then one in the evening. I try to capture different people with different schedules, presented them the information. Lisa came to our meeting. A representative from the city came to the meeting. Somebody from ODOT came to the meeting to also reassure the community, yes, this is a sound place to put a mural. These are some of the expectations from the city and ODOT side. And then we had an open discussion with the residents to ask, what would you like to see on the community mural? I think that helped to have their input, gathered all that information. I always had a sign-in sheet at every function that we have. So as we have more information, I always email it out to everybody, blind copy, just so everybody is aware of the process and they can stay aware of the progress that we're making.
Yeah, and for us, oh, Kacey, did you want to say something?
Go ahead, Nora. That's fine.
Oh, no, okay. For us, we just, because we have this green lawn, it's very much a blank canvas. And the thing that we focused on, that we wanted to focus on the most was really putting together a plan that the community would be a space that the community would use. And so we worked with a co-designer and did a co-design process where we put together 6 different workshops. 4 were open to the community. 1 was specific to the Indianola Presbyterian congregation, and 1 was very specific to the fraternity members that live that surround the church, so that the direct neighbors. But the other 4 were all within the university district at different locations, and really had a hands-on approach about what does community mean and what would your ideal pocket park look like. So that way we can take all of those ideas and all of that analysis and come up with a plan that really incorporates what everybody's kind of looking for. And then we've also used Lisa a lot because she has a wide breadth of information on lots of different things, including Sherwin-Williams paints to use for outdoor benches, because she's done a lot of these different things. So Lisa's been a really good contact. And then through our conversations and through our workshops, we've been able to basically connect with different people in the community to create our planning group. So from those workshops, we actually had our planning committee come together, which includes just general interested people as well as architects. So it all came together really naturally.
Great. Thank you all. I really love hearing kind of these stories and experiences, because obviously I get the rundown and report from my side, but I'm sure there's a lot of distillation that occurs between when that email goes out to me versus sort of what's happening at every single step and stage. So I've just got a couple of like maybe more project specific questions and touch point on. Kacey, I'm going to start with you. Obviously with this project, it's downtown, and downtown itself is its own neighborhood, but it's also sort of the front door to our city. So when it came to doing a public call for art and sort of art that's representative of not only, you know, the downtown spirit, but Columbus, like what were maybe some of the challenges that you faced, or did you like even put any specific prompts out there? What was that negotiation kind of like for the public art side of things?
Yeah, good question. Well, so in some of the research that I did before we put the call for artists out, I tried to get some more information on, the do's and don'ts of that. And one of the pieces of feedback I got was sometimes there will be calls for artists. Artists will submit work that they've designed and created, and then the entity that did the call comes back and says, well, we want that green instead of blue, and can you put the tree over here instead of over here? And they start to pull apart the art that the artist created for this, whatever the call is. So one thing that was really important to me was that whatever the artist submitted was what we were going to go with, and we weren't going to try to dictate or pigeonhole, if you will, what art was going to be submitted. So we kept it really very general, and the prompts that we gave the artists was that this is for this, your artwork has to be for everyone, appropriate for everyone, and it needs to evoke feelings of happiness and joy, and it should be of a caliber appropriate for a downtown community. So that was it. Those were the only guiding parameters, if you will, or guiding principles we gave to the artists. And then those were the same prompts that we asked the selection committee to think about as they were reviewing the artwork. So challenges, I think we wanted to really make sure that we got a diverse representation of artists that responded to the call. So I tried to be really intentional about the places and the people that we reached out to, so that we were trying to get into different communities and make sure we had a wide range of artists who responded to the call. I'm trying to think of other challenges that we ran into. That was really the big one that I was concerned about. And if anything else comes to mind, I'll pass that along. But the selection committee then went through several rounds of whittling down the call for artists, or the artwork submissions. And one piece of guidance that I was given was with the money that we were paying the artists, that we would break that into two rounds of payments, if you will. So rather than dividing the money into the winners, there was a round where the finalists were given, there were 5 finalists who were each given a $300 payment to then create work specifically for the restrooms. And then the 3 winners were given a larger sum. And that was a piece of advice I got to just sort of reward those 5 finalists for submitting work and getting some sort of compensation from that. Was there another part to your question, Lisa, that I missed?
That hits on a lot of different things. I think that we certainly hear from as well when we're working with artists, is compensation for kind of that intellectual property that they're creating, and being, rewarding of that time and energy that they put in to these calls. So I think some really great touch points. Ms. Jennifer, I'm going to go to you, and I think you probably know what my question is going to be, and you touched a little bit on it, but ODOT, you're doing an underpass mural. It's not an unheard of thing in Columbus. We've seen quite a few of those pop up over the last few years, but it's kind of a 2-parter. Obviously, there's the process with going through ODOT. Can you talk a little bit about what that process really looks like? And then kind of as a follow-up, once you actually then are in an underpass and painting, that kind of comes with its own challenges in terms of space. So kind of maybe touch point on those 2 things.
Yes, great question. The ODOT process was a little bit challenging after the project started, only because the initial person that I spoke to when I first started, that person no longer worked for ODOT. So then I was talking to different people who were trying to help me, but it wasn't actually their area of expertise until that person was hired. So after I finish speaking, I'll put in the chat the link where you would apply for the right-of-way permit. The right-of-way permit is what you'll need when you're doing the overpass, because there is a walking space. the walking sidewalk isn't small, like it's large where we could have our painter or artist there and residents can still walk through. But because there will be times where we'll be power washing the wall or where we would have a large piece of equipment, the scaffolding, we may need to cut off part of the street. So that's why you would need a right-of-way permit. You also need a city permit, and I'll put that in the chat, that link for that, just because you're going to be doing something in the city, even though it's ODOT property, but it's also a part of city reporting and responsibility. It was a little bit challenging because the expectation from ODOT was, every time I thought like, oh, okay, well, I'll just apply for the permit and then we're good to go. Then I found out, well, no, you have to have a maintenance plan. There is no guidance for a maintenance plan. You have to have a traffic plan. There's no written guidance for a traffic plan. So I was learning to create what a traffic plan looks like, what a maintenance plan looks like. You have to know, like, I don't know the words, like, but you have to know the distance, because they have to, ODOT or whoever's reviewing your report will look at the space from like Google Earth to see exactly where you're talking about so that they can continue the process. So all of that was challenging, but I learned how to write a traffic maintenance. And that's basically, it's just, okay, what's your plan when you have artists out there? What's your plan so that residents can still flow through and not disrupt you and you're not disrupting residents who are walking through? So that's like all that is. But just to be able to have guidance for that, that would have been helpful. Another piece is that they would ask for measurements, and I didn't know how to do that. And so I got really friendly with Google Earth. I had no idea how you could do that. And instead of me trying to figure all this stuff out, I just Googled in the space and then printed it out and then scanned it in. The issue that you'll run into if you do a beautification piece that doesn't have an address, like where we were in an underpass, then you can use the closest streets. So ours is at the corner of Fairwood and Newberry. You could just use that as a point of reference because ODOT in the city would need to know that also.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Because I forgot to add something else earlier, but I want to make certain that I answered your question about the permit process.
Oh, absolutely. Feel free to add whatever you'd like.
Okay. We also were thinking, okay, well, great. We're going to put this mural there. There's going to be this beautiful space, but then there's all these residents that live by. To us, we want to make certain that we're not just beautifying the mural space, but we're also empowering residents to beautify their space, empowering businesses to beautify their space. So we offered a free beautification workshop in the fall where we had an expert come that's a painter and come and talk about how to beautify your indoor and exterior work of your home and your space. We had somebody that talked about safety, so we did like safety evacuations, and then we also had 2 community cleanups, one in the fall and then one in the spring. And then we have a ongoing process where we as a community will clean up the community, not just where our mural is, but around the neighboring streets. So I wanted to just bring that out as a part of beautification and not just beautifying the one space, but the entire community and getting the residents involved.
I think that's a really great point. I know last week for our conversation, we had Kathy, who is the former president for PAMA, and that was another thing. While they did the banners as sort of the beautification piece, some of their partnerships weren't necessarily towards that, but it was more about community cleanups and organizing activities and events that happen, sort of around those banners and along that corridor to make sure that it's one thing. You don't want to have something that looks beautiful and then have, trash and litter and all those other things kind of detracting from a beautiful piece of artwork that's in the community.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And
Jen.
just one more piece of advice. If you're deciding to do an outdoor mural, be mindful of the time frame. We started the permit process in May, but we didn't receive ODOT approval until I think it was October 26th. By that time, it's too cold to put paint on. So then we had to wait into the spring. So just be mindful of whatever project you're doing. You start immediately with the permit process.
Fantastic point. So I'm gonna kind of both for Nora and Joyce kind of leave you with a two-parter question. What so far has been the biggest challenge of the process? But then what's maybe a positive, unexpected outcome that you've seen as the project has unfolded?
Well, I guess I can start our story with 2009, actually. We started the garden at that particular area in the Franklin Park neighborhood because it was derelict. The block, the trolley barn development was a boarded up property that had been boarded up for 35 plus years. The block, we're the adjacent block, and that block was I think there were 5 occupied residences on the whole block. One of them being a 5-unit apartment row house, and 3 or 4 occupied houses. Everything else was either a boarded up house or a vacant lot. The land we used for the gardens were at that time, and still are, city-owned land bank properties. And we're on either side of what used to be a boarded up city-owned property, which has now been renovated and is occupied. If you come down that block, you won't think that it was ever derelict, because we have new houses built. We have brand new houses built and occupied. We have the 2 gardens, which we are renovating now. And we have a brand new trolley barn, and diagonally across from the garden is a 105-unit apartment building, 5-story apartment building that's under construction right now. So totally, the area has been transformed. It is a new place, and we are in the process of upgrading our infrastructure. So we are just as brand new as what's being built right now. So we were the seed, and the transformation has happened. And we're on that bandwagon for building a community, a new community, because frankly, the area has been, demographics have changed quite a bit. So we have the old residents and we have the new residents, and we've got to come together. And because we want this area to stay diversified, not just for people who are economically comfortable and can afford single family residences that prices are beyond what we ever imagined they would be. But also there are lots of people here who are low, moderate income, who should not be forced out, quite frankly. And so the garden is a place where we can come, and it's a level playing field. Our whole emphasis in this transformation has been, if we build it, they will come. And the if we build it, they will come is based upon the fact that we want people to come together where your economics don't matter. We're here, we're trying to grow food to help other people. We're trying to build relationships across demographics. And so it is an opportunity for, especially at this particular time when Columbus is growing exponential growth, people coming from all over are moving here. And we have to have an opportunity to know each other, respect each other, and support each other. Our motto is caring, sharing, working, and growing together. And the garden is the place where we can do that, because it doesn't cost any money to come out and play in the dirt and meet some new people and do good at the same time, because the food that we grow, we give it to the food pantries, give it to food people who are in need, neighbors, whomever. It's just an opportunity to grow community. And so we would encourage everyone to do something to make your neighborhoods safe. And part of being safe is knowing your neighbor and helping them. We are especially excited and hopeful that we will be able to, as we develop this new infrastructure, to engage youth in learning about growing produce, but also learning about the environment, learning entrepreneurial skills, because now we have the East Market where potentially they can go over and have a stand and make a little spending money, you know, and learn some skills that they can translate as they grow into adulthood. So it's very worthwhile, very rewarding. And we have great hopes for the future. As I said when I started out, we had plans and we had vision, but we needed some help. So thank you, 614 Beautiful, and thank you, Lisa Snyder, for your support as we have gone through this process. We've had any number of things happen, like we had last year when we were starting this program, we had 3 trees falls because of climate change, and 3 trees were blown over in the garden, which delayed our process. Weather, because we're doing this with volunteer labor, you have to recruit the volunteers, and you know, sometimes they're able to come out, and sometimes best laid plans, they can't make it. You have to roll with the punches, and the weather, as we know, unpredictable. So that changes your plans too. So, but keep on plugging. That's all my advice, keep on going. Just keep on going and it will be okay.
Yes, always to build on what Joyce is saying is always keep going, have a plan B. That's for sure certain. I would say probably one of the toughest things that I think because we're in the midst of implementing at the moment is really, so I mean, we have a budget, obviously, and you're going to budget things out, but it's then realizing how, so for example, we have garden beds and we need about over 300 cubic feet of compost and soil to fill 8 different garden beds. And that's a lot of soil, and it's a lot of things to fill it with. And so it's thinking about, okay, where can we get a donation of compost and of soil, so that way we're not spending a quarter of our budget on just compost and soil, which are very important parts of having a community park, pocket park with this pollinator garden aspect to it. And then there are other things that have come up with through our, so we have, obviously you apply with this budget, and for us, we kind of were saying like, okay, this is where we think we could put the money. And then we had the workshops. And so there are other things that have come up that are, that we know from the community that are really important to have within the park. And so it's trying to, I think one of our, I guess, biggest maybe struggles at the moment is just figuring out where our donations can come from to help supplement some of the grant money, so that way we can do everything that the community is really looking forward to do. And then also reminding ourselves and our planning committee that this is kind of forward thinking and visionary. So what can we get done this year? And then what are ways in which we can say, well, that's an improvement that we can continue to work on for next year? Because it might not, it would be wonderful if we could do it all right now, but it's also really fun to look forward to think about, like, well, how can we continue to improve this space year after year, and what can be really our like foundation of a plan, and then figuring out, oh, that might have cost it, realizing as you're going through your implementation process of, oh, I need a lot more of that material than I realized. And so I would just be wary of like, okay, so how much are you going to need of one thing versus another? And is there potentially donations of materials that you can get? And I think Ryan said get free compost. Yes, so we actually we're going to get free compost. My hands are actually dirty because I would just picked up 80 bags of topsoil, of free topsoil, and I rushed in here to get on the call. But so yes, we were able to get some donations there, so that's how we were able to get that. So thank you for that, for that tip as well. And yes, it's a super good resource. But that's just one thing when you're planning on your budget, or once you're through the application process and you are awarded the grant money, to kind of remember, like, okay, well, where do we think we can get donations if we think that this might not be able to cover everything, especially if we need more of one resource, like 300 cubic feet of compost and topsoil.
Well, I really appreciate, I know I said we'd have some time for questions, but just in the sake of time also to get through some of the other stuff. If you do have questions for anyone on our panel, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I can get those questions answered, and then I'll put them on our FAQ section of our 614 Beautiful website so that everyone has access to that information. But please feel free to leave that comment and we will get to that. Thank you so much to our panelists. I know that it's been, challenging at times, but I think also really rewarding, the outcomes that we've seen from the projects already. And we're really excited to see kind of all of these projects wrap up here, in the next few months. So thank you all for taking the time out today, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll get into kind of our more of our info session on kind of what's next. So 1 second here to transition from one space to the other. Okay. It's like the joy of Zoom that I've still not figured out however many years we're now into this session. So go ahead and share screen. Okay. So again, please feel free at any time, like if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We will be putting in information, but I just kind of want to do a really quick overview on the process itself. So kind of if you're thinking of steps in this timeline for what's next, really the first step is create, right? The idea, to find your location, the site, what is kind of the big thing that you want to do. Next step would be, and I think we've talked a lot about this already, engaging. So that's also promoting kind of concepts, but providing opportunities for partners, for community members to come in and really build support around that project. Apply, obviously, which we'll kind of get into some more detailed stuff about that, but actually putting in the application. Obviously, if selected, build kind of those permits, approvals, implement. And then I think a fun part for us has also been just being able to participate in some of these celebrations, small or big, that people have been having. That's been really important too, is it's not just about creating a place or keeping a place. It's about finding opportunities to really celebrate and bring the community together around this new thing that has been created. Some key dates to note for the program. Obviously, the application period has already opened. I'm going to reiterate this probably 12 times throughout the rest of this presentation that June 28th is our deadline. So I apologize in advance, but submissions are due via email, 5 p.m. June 28th. And again, we'll go through kind of what that application process looks like. Jury deliberation, grant announcement will kind of take place in July. Grant funds would be available as early as September of this year. And one thing that's a little bit different from previous cycles, so if you have participated in the past, we do have a kind of a hard deadline for grant funds to be spent, which is July 31st, 2025. I've already had some questions from people come in saying that they think they could implement in fall. That's great if you think that that's a realistic timeline, but just something to note when you're looking at that implementation timeline, that's a little bit shorter of a cycle than we've had in the past 2 years. Some eligible project types. Again, these are more representative images of the types of improvements. We really want people to be creative, but I get this question a lot. What do you mean if I say a pocket park or some sort of urban design? It's again, taking a vacant site, like maybe it's a vacant infill site in a residential neighborhood and finding a way to repurpose it to make it a more activated space for community to come together. Landscape enhancements, I think, could be as simple as planters along a street frontage that create more of a better, street presence, but also could be maybe thinking outside the box with a parklet or something that adds a little bit of green space, especially in a lot of our urban neighborhoods that don't necessarily have those natural green spaces and tree canopy. It could also be right-of-way improvements that help impact, transit and being able to have, bike infrastructure or, activated space to support a local business or function that might be occurring in the community. Could be placemaking signage. I think, one thing I want to kind of clarify with this, I know there are a lot of neighborhood, small little neighborhood or neighborhoods that around Columbus that have kind of, welcome to, Cherry Lane neighborhood or whatever. I think when we're talking about placemaking signage, think broader than that, more so as again, a neighborhood thing. It could be a physical sculpture like you see on the screen, but it also could be a mural or something that really welcomes people into the neighborhood. And then obviously public art, a lot of public art I think people think of as murals or sculptures, but get creative. Maybe it's taking an existing parking lot that's in your neighborhood that could be better activated and using the stalls as sort of your canvas for local artists. So those are the types of projects. Again, these are represented images of what, just to kind of inspire you. We have additional images available on the website, but just kind of something to keep in mind as you're looking. Some considerations, and I think one that we've reiterated, multiple times in this process is, these projects really are for the community and by the community. So using those mechanisms that have been discussed by our panel to get the community involved in a process, if it's a voting process for a public art piece, if it's a public call, if it's workshops, whatever that might be, we really want to make sure that, you can build it and they will come if they feel that that community has been built in the process. So some kind of just general eligibility, because of the way that the funding is sourced, it does need to be within City of Columbus corporation limits. So, please make sure. I have had a few people reach out from some neighboring communities. This is a City of Columbus grant. While there's not a requirement to be located in specific geography, obviously there's 5 additional points that can be scored if you're in one of the opportunity neighborhoods. The link should be working on the website. There's a GIS map that kind of outlines that. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Because insurance, waivers, organization, receiving of funds is a requirement, the primary applicant must be at least 18 years old. And just also consideration of insurance or waivers. A lot of artists do have some umbrella insurance that they can have for the implementation, but if you are going to be having some very active things going on, just are you covered? Just unfortunately, we live in a very liable society. So just be ensured that while you're creating these great spaces, that there aren't going to be headaches for you down the road as well. And then again, the organizations must be able to receive grant funding. So that does not have to mean that you are a 501c3 nonprofit and receiving funds. You can partner with fiscal agent, but just something to keep in mind, just because there may be percentages that they will take for administrative fees that will kind of eat away into your budget. Or you may need to, again, if your organization needs somebody, finding that organization that can, you know, be the fiduciary and have all the fiscal responsibility might be a requirement. $15,000 is still the maximum grant amount. So that can be used pretty much on what I like to say is like physical things, right? It could be the furnishings, it could be lighting, it could be, you know, permits, applications, equipment rentals, lifts, things like that to do, and scaffolding for artwork. It also, if you're, you know, working and you want to put lights up in a space and you need to hire an electrician, it can be paid towards vendors. And, you know, other contract, even again, muralists as well. And then we are allowing some of that money to be used towards food and water for volunteers, since we are kind of encouraging that side of the process. So again, it's sort of a $500 cap to support, you know, volunteer efforts. And we kind of will be a little bit hardline on that when it comes to the grant side of things. Again, the full applications available on the program website. Again, I told you I'd remind you June 28th as the deadline. It's also been parsed out a little bit. If you want to just download specific pieces, you know, the first piece of the application is truly a one-page application. Really, this is for us to just have kind of a primary point of contact. If there are questions, if a file doesn't download correctly or is broken, a broken link comes in, who are those primary points of contact? Where is the project located? Kind of what are the partners there? A 15 slide presentation. This can be Google Slides, PowerPoint, if you're, you know, Canva, whatever format you want to have, just make sure it's saved as a PDF, and that 15 slides is your maximum amount of cards in the deck, if you will. We do have a minimum requirement in terms of what would be needed to submit, and it's 10 slides that are sort of the minimum requirements. We just want to make sure that people are providing enough information about, you know, what the design and the project is itself, kind of what currently is there, right? It's nothing makes something look more transformative than seeing the before and the after. So having some of that imagery, you know, ready and available. Again, how are you going to implement? How are you going to maintain? How is the budget look for that? And then, you know, partnerships, things like that with engagement strategy, all of that. We provided some documents that are also available on the website. The top left and top right are really kind of more guiding questions. They're not really a true implementation or maintenance plan because it's so difficult to come up with a blanket, you know, implementation or maintenance strategy, but they're questions you should be asking yourself based on, you know, what is the timeline? How many volunteers do you need? Those types of things you should be asking yourself. And again, based on the project that you have. And then we also kind of gave some samples of like, what could a budget look like? You can get really parsed out and detailed and put a full table there. Or you can just kind of have buckets of numbers for the types of improvements. A question that I have received from a few people already is, if you're sourcing additional funding or in-kind donations from external sources and it exceeds at $15,000, should I put my full budget or just what, you know, the program's covering? My recommendation always is to show kind of what you are going to be using the full, you know, funding that you are sourcing from, and then just very clearly kind of identify what are those pieces that are grant specific funding mechanisms. And then kind of the last piece and a half, depending, obviously, if you do not own the site, there does need to be a letter of support submitted from the property owner that they are okay with the changes. Nothing will kill a project faster than having the property owner say no. So please just be aware of that. The big thing is we do want to have at least one letter of support from the community. That can come in a variety of ways. The top image there actually shows a neighborhood door-to-door petition that one of our grant recipients did to just get buy-in and feedback. I know sometimes area commissions or civic associations, which obviously could be a letter of support organization. Sometimes they may be, you know, conditional, or they may not want to put a letter of support out formally from those, or the timeline doesn't really work. There are a myriad of ways that you can kind of make sure that you're showing that the community has bought in. Again, just wanted to provide a couple different examples of where people have done that. And minimum is one. You're certainly more than welcome. And I think most of our organizations that receive grants have submitted more than one method to show that the community really is bought in. Going through really quickly evaluation criteria. This again is in the brief as well, but just kind of wanting to touch point on what is the jury really going to be looking at. 30 points are going to be going towards project feasibility. Again, that's, does the budget seem in line with what you want to, what you're requesting and what you're going to be doing? Is the timeline seem reasonable? Do you have maintenance plans? Do you have ability and capacity kind of take care of the kind of steps throughout this process? Community benefit activation is 40 points. Again, is it a community generated idea, or at least have touch points in which the community can get involved in this process? Again, those 5 points in there for the opportunity neighborhood can also be gained in this section here. But also, is it inclusive, right? If you really are saying it's for all, and then there's accessibility issues or limitations for people, or certain age groups that are restricted from using this site, you can't really say that you're an inclusive project with then, contradictory design elements. So be thinking kind of that as well. And then creativity, we do want to reward innovation in like interesting ways, and interesting, and innovation can come in a variety of ways. It could be the actual project itself is really, innovative for the neighborhood or kind of the history of a community. It also could just be that it's, really taking in sustainable practices, or it could be that the way in which you're, partnering a bunch of organizations coming together, that can be also a way to kind of gain points here. And then, we also talk a little bit about layering improvements to kind of broader initiatives. If there's a BRT, if there's, a zone in kind of change that's coming in, if there's a Celebrate One initiative that your project can help support, how can we kind of build upon things? Because I think, as Nora kind of touch pointed when she was talking, you can have an initial seed of an idea that can continue to build and grow. How can we, whether this is the seed or you're building and growing on things that are already occurring in your neighborhood, how can that kind of strengthen the project overall? I will say, just as a caveat, while I don't, the points are not shifting from any of our previous things, I do think probably how our jury and evaluators look at that feasibility is going to be important. I mentioned again that there was a pretty quick turnaround for the grant side of things this year. So, that might kind of change the approach of finding projects that really can be implemented by that July 31, 2025 deadline. And last, just, questions that anyone has. I really do encourage people to reach out. I'm, grateful to have gotten to know all of our kind of grant recipients over the last couple of years and build relationships with them. But a lot of those relationships started when we were actually going through the application process and just understanding, having questions and being curious about things. So I do really encourage, if you have a question, call our office. You can always email if it's in an off office time, or you just have a very specific question or want to attach, content. I've even told people for their presentations, if you want to review the slide decks, and, have some feedback on that. Sometimes I realize when you're putting together a presentation of your ideas, all of the history that comes with it. But when our jury is receiving it, they don't come with that embedded history. So if you need just a second set of external eyes to look at your presentation deck to say, is the idea clear? I'm happy to review that as well. And certainly, if you call or email and you want to set up a one-on-one, time to meet in our office, you're more than welcome. We're in the Wyland Park neighborhood, just at the corner of Summit and 8th. So please do feel free to pop in. I usually ask people to just call ahead or to schedule, because I'm not always at the office, because I am out and about in the community a lot. But certainly, we want you to ask early and often, and Again, any general questions that come in, we will place on our FAQ page of the site, but I realize we went a little bit over our time, but certainly if you do have questions and are able to stay on, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. But, you know, you're also welcome. I realize we're about 5 minutes over. If you would like to hop off, you're more than welcome as well. This will be posted, by the end of the day tomorrow at the latest, on the program website. So if you want to come back and revisit anything, you're also welcome to do so then. So any questions from our group at large here? Perfect. Well, enjoy. It's a beautiful spring day, right as we've started unofficially summer. But thank you all so much for taking the time. I really hope that this session has encouraged you to apply for a 614 beautiful grant. And so I hope to see some of these same names pop up when we're processing applications. But please visit the website www.614beautiful.org. And you know, we're happy to answer any questions, connect people, and enjoy